groups at
4 or 5 groups were at 75 for the pass.
4 out of 5 were at 75. And we had a little bit different on the quorum. We had 3 groups at 75 on the quorum as well. And then a quorum and one pass at 80. Or no.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. So would there like to be any further group discussion? Anybody?
I saw a hand up with Dana.
Dana Bailey or
No,
Dana
Dana Rundle?
I was going to make a motion. If you want to do discussion first, that's fine.
No. If you'd like to have a motion on the floor, that even better to push against. So
I move that we make the quorum for attendance 75% and the pass measure at 75%, as those were the majority from all the groups.
I would second that.
Second from Mr. Wood. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Now, of course, I really broke Bob's rules by having a discussion prior. Was there any open, wide group discussion? Now, this is where Josh and I have talked about. It gets a little tricky to facilitate 40 Zoom tiles in a group discussion. So if we could be orderly, is there anything that you passionately need to get out for or against Ms. Rundle's motion that was seconded by Dr. Wood for the group?
And if you want to virtually raise your hand, I've got the participant list over here. So I would know if there is a feedback that you need to give. And I know we're on 3 screens right now on my Zoom. So we'll give about 20 seconds to raise your hand virtually. If there's any other discussion we need to have on that. Oh, I see one. I thought I saw one.
Oh, the hand was up and now no longer. Where did it go? Okay.
So somebody's just playing around with us for a second here.
I know. So I believe educators call that wait time, right? Appropriate wait time, right? A lot of principals and parents nodding their head. I'm not seeing a lot of passionate, negative or positive to Ms. Rundle's motion. So I guess at this point in time, we are going to try something we haven't done before with the group. The one way to capture votes is we're going to have a poll pop up, I believe. Stephen, can you explain to the group how we envision this to work? Sorry, Stephen.
Most I've been called on ever. The polling button in the box should appear. It'll look something along the lines of this. Should be up for you. You'll have the option to click yes or no. Josh or Jake will give you the question. So 3 people have all clicked yes at this point.
So
okay. But time out. Wipe that slate clean because I have not said what we're voting on yet.
Hold on.
There is a motion on the table, but we got to people
close it out.
Pass measures, and I love that. I want to say I think
there's a lot of enthusiasm about the quorum vote. So
that was me. I was excited.
I know. So just so the group knows, I'm pretty easygoing guy. I get persnickety obviously about numbers in the CFO. But I also like a good, clean motion on the table so that it can be recorded for minutes and people understand exactly what they're voting on. So, Dana, would you restate your motion clearly for the group? And then we will take a vote after that through the polling.
I move that we have a 75% attendance for quorum and a 75% passage rate on any
changes
we make.
Yep. All right. All those in favor or against the question, please click your poll.
If you're in favor of that, you would vote yes. If you are not in favor, you would vote no. And we will see where this all falls out. This is the first time we've tried to do this on a boundary review. I'm so excited. I can't contain myself to see what comes out of this.
If this is what excites you, then I'm really sorry, Dr. Almy.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've taken your first measure. Everybody go down to the reaction button and do a clap or a something like that, because I am so proud of this group for taking their first measure. Jake, do you have anything to add as far as before we move on to our next item?
No, I do know, Stephen, if we go stop and share results, does that just show it? Can everybody see the polling data in front of them or no? You can. Okay. I can never tell with Zoom what's layered or not. So if we do stop and share results, do we know what happens to that? Stephen, sorry, before I click it.
It should disappear now.
Okay.
I mean, it stays up on my end until I reset it.
All right, and just for the record and those taking minutes, it was 39 yes, 1 no vote. Motion carries, obviously, given our 50+1%. So
All right.
I would normally congratulate you and let you have a break if we were in brick and mortar, but oh no, we're going to move right through this. But congratulations on making your first, going to breakout, making a decision, and then of course we'll get better at communicating as a whole body. I think that will be one of our biggest challenges. You don't get that real-time exchange with 40 in a Zoom tile. So we'll work diligently for that. So really appreciate you, and motion carries.
Okay, and thank you to thank you to our spokespeople from our groups for reporting out. Thank you for Dana for your motion so succinctly shared with the group. And thank you, Susan Mendel, for it being your birthday today. I thought I would throw that in there for a second time. Without further ado, let's move on. It is now the Jake Cooper Show, and with some of our technical team. Jake is going to take the baton here. He's going to review our district enrollment and facility data. And then he is going to review the Springboard Proposal for boundaries. And that's going to be the next chunk. We don't like to do this as very often if we can avoid it, but I'm going to use the term sit and get probably for the next 30 minutes or so, but it's super duper important information because it is going to act as the basis of the conversations moving forward. So without further ado, CFO Cooper, take it away.
So my goal always is, as your CFO, besides keeping things boring and predictable, is also to make public finance as entertaining as possible. I don't know if I can do it through Zoom, but I'll give it a try. So those of you who know me personally know that I like to have some levity, and we'll try to keep that as well as we move through this. There's a lot of information. It is all on the website. And the files were fairly large, so I did not email them to you directly. I can, and we probably will after this if you want to have your own set. Of course, if you have a request into me, if you want it in a different format, I often get the request, can I have it in Excel? Because people think they have a magic answer in Excel that I don't. Good luck, nobody's yet done that. Sorry, had to keep that levity going, no. But, so a few things about the data that's before us. You'll see some historical information. You're going to see building capacities that come from our capital facilities plan. The real goal and task for us is we have broken the district into pieces, neighborhoods or areas. Now, they're what we currently have them broken into. So often another thing the boundary team committee could do, and we haven't talked about this, is let's say a piece, as we get to it, will have 140 kids in it. Well, sometimes we'll break that piece up because I often find when I listen to the community members, there's communities within communities. We think of one Highlands, but oh no, we know there's more than one Highlands, don't we? There's multiple areas of the Highlands. And so, that would be part of your work too, is, as we've learned to be transparent with the community over the years, give a springboard, our best thinking. And that's just what it is. So we take no offense or have any pride of authorship. If you think you can do it better, and that's why you're here, is to make this the best boundaries possible. I know the last boundaries we implemented, I think, was in 2010. So they have held for a decade or more, which is pretty phenomenal given how much growth we've had since then. So I'm going to take you through enrollment data, and then I'm going to comment specifically about some of the technical data you're going to see so that you're well grounded in. I would gladly take any questions throughout. So if you want to go hot on your mic and interrupt me, I'm perfectly comfortable with doing that. And then we'll get started. And so I'll get my share screen going. And also, I hate going to share screen. One disadvantage is a lot of you disappear, of course.
And Jake, could you or Stephen let Tara Coyle back in? She somehow got booted out and she's in the waiting room, I think.
She's back.
I'll have Stephen do that while I'm.
Jake, are your numbers based on our current numbers within COVID, or are they looking at numbers that were prior to COVID, or what?
Both, Dr. Wood. So great question. So can everybody see the screen on the left, and do you need it to be larger in size? That's what I can't quite tell whenever I'm sharing a screen on Zoom because everybody has different settings. So if not, like I said, you can go into the website and follow along page by page. It is all posted there if you want to have your own, or if you have a second monitor in place. So slide 1 is just a historical enrollment slide, and I'm watching my time since it is 7:30. It shows you that from 2005, believe it or not, to current, we have grown roughly 5,000 kids. You will notice the decline, and Dr. Wood gave me a softball. I really appreciate that. The other complication you all have, and including me and mostly the technical team, is trying to determine what the short-term and long-term impacts of COVID are going to have on enrollment. So the district did lose 1,000 students, a 9% reduction in elementary, and a 3 or 4% reduction at the secondary level, just under or just over 5% district-wide. So we do believe that that is an anomaly in enrollment. I personally do. And of course, depending upon our service models, and if we're back in brick and mortar, as example, in the fall, we have a likelihood of getting a significant portion of those kids back. Just for your perusal is the historical enrollment by building. So just to ground you in building sizes and enrollment over time. So nothing too complicated on that screen. Now I'm going to go through some graphs. There's some crazy ones in here. So no finance presentation would be complete without some graphs and charts. Those of you who know me, I love a good bar graph or a line chart. This is just to show you over time. And Issaquah has historically been one of the fastest growing school districts in the state. We have slowed down recently just based on available land for building, but we still have some significant home building in the pipeline that will continue to grow. And we have still underdeveloped pockets, and you'll see as we get to the Springboard, you'll ask questions like, why does Issaquah Middle School boundary down to a certain enrollment level? Well, I'll tell you why, and that will be based on some growth. So I'll walk you through that as well. So nothing too fancy here, just some line graphs about historical enrollment, but still pertinent. So you get a feel for the level as you move forward. Now, I love this graph because it's very crazy. It just shows you over time each elementary and what their enrollment has done. And what often when you see a huge uptick or downtick, for lack of a better description, that's often when a building has opened and we've had a reboundary. So sometimes that happens, or we moved a program in particular. So those of you who want to look at your building specifically and track it over time, you're more than welcome to do on this slide, but that is to give you just a glimpse in what each building has done over a certain time period. Now, currently, and we're going to have to figure out, not for this group, but when we add that high school, we're going to have another area, what we might call it the West, I'm not sure, but just to ground people in how generally we speak of the district. The central area, or the corridor, is basically the Issaquah High School feeder pattern. The north area is Skyline in its feeder pattern. And then the south area is Liberty in its feeder pattern. So if you hear us talk about north, south, or central or corridor, that is of the areas we're talking about. And I just mention that because, you know, sometimes people kind of are in their own region and don't speak of the other ones as much. So that is what you're seeing there. Now, there will inevitably be a question for you all about the need for facilities. And, you know, we've lost enrollment. We're down 1,000 kids. You're still building. Why do you need a reboundary? Well, that is why I show you consistently the amount of portables we have. And these are only the portables at elementary. So we have a significant amount of students in portable classrooms. District-wide, I believe we're at 210 portable classrooms. Just to put it in perspective, the new elementary 16 is built with, Mr. Mullins, correct me or not, is 25 classrooms off the top of my head. And, you know, our newer buildings like Sunny Hills are built with 33 or 34 classrooms. So when you start to think about how much student capacity we have in portables, you'll understand why we continue to open new brick and mortar buildings. So portables, of course, are not a bad thing. We buy great portables, we maintain them. However, it is not considered permanent capacity. And there are pros and cons to having portable buildings around your campuses, right? Security is one, bathrooms and running water can be another, depending on that. And our building principals have done masterful jobs over the years, rotating classes and teams in and out. But if you've been in Issaquah for any significant amount of time, I guarantee your student has had a portable classroom. So we are usually in the top 5 statewide in the number of portables used, just to continue our rapid growth. Any questions on the portables? Okay. Not appropriate wait time. This is what, if you want to see more detail on the portables, I've learned over the years, along with my fellow class of 2004, apparently a bunch of us got hired that year, that the more information we share with you, the better. This is just another look at the portables. It's by site, including the secondary. You see we're 221. And there's some we have one single portable, and most of them are, when we talk about portables, are doubles. So if I say there's 110 portables, that equates to 220 classrooms. So most of them are 2 900 square foot approximate classrooms, or 1,800 square foot. So that's why I see the number of portables there. Middle school enrollment trends. So we have, the good thing about where we're at from a facility standpoint is that the fewer buildings you have and the larger you run them, the more efficient you are from a cost perspective. That, however, takes a toll on the building, its administrators, its core facility. Starting lunch at 10 a.m. and ending it at 1 p.m. I'm exaggerating slightly, but so our goal, as it was in 2015 when we planned the bond, was to add another middle school. You can see on the graph here what our averages have done over time. So I added the average, and the numbers above the orange line are the average. So you can see over time it's grown. We peaked in 2019 with an average middle school enrollment over 1,000. If you look across the state, those are large middle schools. There's no way around it. And of course, even with the enrollment decline, they only slightly dropped. And even with the 6th middle school, you all can do pretty quick math. That average doesn't lower that much. So it's well needed facility space. And we'll talk about it, but you can see that upper green line, Maywood, the biggest middle school in the system. And of course, you can see it, as we get into the Springboard, our goal is to draw down its population to a more reasonable level and closer in line with its other compadre elementary school or middle schools. Any questions on historical middle school enrollment trends? Okay, watching the clock at 25 minutes. So this slide shows you my wins and losses over the years when it comes to projecting enrollment. So I'm sorry about the size of that slide. I may be able to get a little bigger. Apologies. So there's a running average. You can see historically over 15 years, we've had a favorable 125 students over projection on the average. The average per year over 15 years was, that does not make any sense, that stat, sorry. And then an average percent variance of just 400. So well, that's a difference over 15 years, and only an average of just over 8 kids if you were going to average all that out. Now, that being said, you can obviously see that 2021 did me no favors, and me personally or the district financially, as we lost a significant amount of students as they made families made alternative choices for education. A big part of that, of course, was nearly 250 kids short of projection. Short of projection for kindergarten. People made different decisions on, we often joke that they redshirted their students, so they may have held them back or gone private for K. That was one decline. And then of course, generally spread across all the elementary schools was decline, and no elementary in particular was sheltered from that decline. So we will see. I think a lot of that obviously has to do with our educational delivery model currently, but there was a significant decline. And then, statewide, I believe last I looked, the state was down over 35,000 students. So a significant amount as well. So we were not immune. A lot of our neighbors were down significant amounts as well. So we will hope that we'll bounce back from that. But even if we were to remain at that 19,141 level, we are still, as you can see, when we planned the bond in 2015-16, at 18,700. So still in need of those facilities. I provided you all a sneak peek for this committee in particular. I wanted to show you 3 different variations of enrollment projections. So every year I am tasked with projecting enrollment that drives the budget and then the staffing. And so before you and for your perusal, I have a what I would say using my standard model of enrollment projection. One quick note is most of the items we talk about will be excluding running start students because they are not utilizing the facility. We've accounted for some part-time running start students at our high schools, but that's not germane for here. But just so you know, when I talk about student FTE on a district-wide basis, most often it excludes running start. So this enrollment projection here is using a standard model of what I would do in a normal year. It's a cohort survival model for enrollment projection, very linear based. It just shows mediocre growth next year at 94. That would be one model. Here is a continued COVID decline. So assuming we are remote still, people continue to make alternative choices, the district could slip into further decline. That potentially would lose another 700 students across the system. And then the third option, we've got the COVID bounce back, which is what I'm hoping for is, me personally, some normalcy, brick and mortar school come the fall. We'll see. That is the most aggressive, of course, enrollment projections, and that'd be 1,000 kids up. So you can see before us, both financially and from a facility standpoint, given the cloud of COVID or the coronavirus, we have potentially several different enrollment options. And so I wanted to lay those out for you so you could see kind of the swings of enrollment. I believe all 3 models would still warrant the need for these facilities and to open them and relieve the overcrowding. So any questions on the enrollment methodology in those 3 various options that you're seeing there? Dr. Almy, anything? I can't, as I have a share screen.
I'm not seeing any hands up. And didn't folks just know at the end of the meeting we're gonna go over kind of some of the mini homework assignments. It's a lot of information. As questions come up, even over the next 2 weeks, feel free to email Jake and I.
Okay.
All good for now, Jake.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, no, we've got a question. Principal Funes, Megan.
Oh, that was a previous question, but I do have another one. Jake, can you go back to the second iteration that you shared, the one before this? What was that one? That was that was if we continued fully remote, correct?
Yes.
Okay, just confirming that.
Correct. That would be the assumption if, in my opinion, the worst case scenario is that, we are in fully remote and families continue to make alternative choices because they are not comfortable with the remote environment, even though I think we've made great strides since last spring. But it does not replace, as you know, brick and mortar. So that is what that is. Megan, thanks for asking that clarifying question.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. So what I have here before you, and it's important because I always stress to my team and staff that I want our numbers to be consistent throughout all the documents we produce and then understandable to the public. So this is an excerpt of what we prepare every year, and it's called the Capital Facilities Plan. And what I wanted to point you to in this excerpt, you can look at the whole plan if you want, is what we're using for standard of service. And standard of service is basically how we're calculating class size. So at elementary, to calculate capacity, and you'll see it later, we're using an average class size of 20 across K5. So that gives us the ability to have that lower class size K3. And then, as we jump up in 4 or 5, so we learned that average is right around 20 or so. And then I want to talk about a class size of 26 grades 6 through 8. And we use the class size of 26 because that is how we allocate the staff at the secondary level. And of course, at secondary, you have to account for a preparatory period where the teacher is not teaching. So the resulting class size may be closer to 31, but from a facility standpoint, we often measure it at a lower number, as my secondary principals are well aware of, and that's how their teachers are allocated. So we have service levels of average class size of 20 and then 26 at our middle school, just to ground you in what we're using for levels of service. A lot of information here. We will have conversations about enrollment projections. You will hear me talk about potential student growth and why we boundaried and made assumptions. This is to give you a taste of what we call generation factors, and all the generation factors is in this case the development, its number of units, and then of course the number of resulting students, and it gives you basically a number of students per unit, and so that's what we call the generation rate. So if you hear me talk about a single family development, of course, that generates a lot of children, I'll be talking about the generation rate. So we've had generation rates, as you can see on this, as low as 0.176. I've had, when Trossix first opened, it had almost a generation rate of 2. So it depends on the development and the age of the development. But for the most part, I look at generation rates and they help us inform our demographic projections going forward. That's the single family generation rate. And then multifamily, same thing, but just for our multifamily housing. In Issaquah, we have a very interesting mix. We've seen some larger multi-bedroom multifamily housing that of course generates more students than a studio or 1 bedroom. So something to think about as well as we have still have some large master plan or large developments that are coming down the pipeline that we'll make some assumptions about as we talk about boundaries, particularly in the corridor area. Of importance, the urban growth boundary. This is just to show you where we can cite schools. So we can only cite schools inside the urban growth boundary and not outside. We have a few schools that are outside because they're grandfathered in and built before that rule was changed. I often get the question, and this is just anticipation of a query, why are you building schools where you're building them? Why can't you build them here, et cetera? And that's because we are confined to build inside the urban growth area only. So that's why you see the site at Talus, the base of Talus for middle school 6. The site for what was known as the Volpe property, if you were a long-time resident, across from the entrance of Klahani for elementary 16, and then of course the property we are working on and have acquired and are still waiting for final permitting on as 220, as 43rd, after the roundabout, and it turns into 228 as you head up Sammamish, where the Lutheran College used to be, our city church. So capacities, these go along with our levels of service. You don't have to go into this chart. This is a point in time. This is what we do annually, but it will inform you as we look into our springboard. So it shows you, and we're going to talk about capacity in a few different ways. Usually permanent, which is basically, think about it as your stick-built foundation building, your actual building, and then your portable capacity. And then we often combine those two numbers. And we also have what's called future portables. So a lot of our buildings, we still could put portables on, or they have plans for portables. So we'll talk about permanent and then portable capacity as well. Same chart, but for middle school capacities. And then a total number as well. And I'm sorry I'm breezing through that because I really do need to get to the springboard, which of course is everybody's favorite part of the program. So a lot of general and broad enrollment information there. I didn't go building specific too much. You see the capacities charts. You want to ground yourself in that. And then we're going to move on to the Springboard proposal as soon as I pull it up. Any questions as we transition?
I think we're good for right now. I'll keep my eye on the virtual hand raise, Jake, but keep rolling.
Okay. So I know everybody learns a little bit different way, but I in this case, it's hard for me to customize your learning modality. So what we do, as I said, we break the district and into pieces like a puzzle. The data before you is middle school only. It's point in time at the 10 right after the 10-1 enrollment count. It moves everybody back to their home attendance area. So if you were a Merlin kiddo and you were out of attendance area, but you were going to Apollo as an example, you would be back to your home school. So it pushes all the kids back to their home attendance, so where they live. So the numbers don't add up and you're like, well, that isn't right. That's because we have literally not chased them. We have through our GIS system, and we're using Versatrans, we have moved all those kids back to their home address and are looking at their catchment areas. So that's what you see is if you're like, well, that isn't right. And that's because those numbers are where the kids actually live, not where they attend school. So that is what we do. So the first step, of course, yes.
Are you supposed to be sharing your screen or what are we looking at?
Oh, that would be a good thing for me to continue to do, Lisa.
Thank you.
That's why Josh said you should get to the Springboard. And then I'm like, well, I see the Springboard on my left screen.
The inner workings of text between Jake and I.
I just assume you can see what I see. Sorry. And by the way, that was an appropriate break-in, Lisa. I appreciate it. Because otherwise, we would have got halfway through the presentation and everybody would have thought I was a raving lunatic. So appreciate it. So spreadsheet, pretty simple. Top here is our abbreviations for a school. Piece key, which follows this, right? You'll see the how we break it into pieces. Just to ground you as well, elementary, middle school. Hopefully that is understandable. And then Cascade, Challenger, Discovery, Endeavor, elementary 17. Creekside, Sunny Hills, Beaver Lake, Pine Lake, Clark, E16. I assume people know what Grand Ridge, Cougar Ridge, Issaquah Valley, Sunset, IMS, Middle School 6, PCMS, Apollo, Briarwood, Maple Hills, Newcastle, Maywood. Okay. There they are. All 22 since we added 23. No, not 23. Sorry. 15 and 6. No, that's true. We have that many schools. Wow. Not even including the high schools. So all the schools are laid out in a linear fashion. So what we do is the pieces and the number of students correspond to each other. And they then in turn, as we go down the chart, feed this spreadsheet here at the bottom. And here's what's important. Here's our piece counts. Okay, all our puzzle pieces totaled up. Here's our current enrollment, and they're not going to match because it was just a number check for us. I believe we were off by 5 or 6, so a point in time measurement. What we also have to do with the data is we have several hundred out of district students that are staff kids or allowed to come in. What we do then is, since they don't live in, but we have to account for them as using capacity because under state law, they're allowed to come into the school. So just so the parent community knows that, we just mathematically spread them over the catchment area. So, we try our best to account for those out of district kids, but they are also in the numbers. Okay. Permanent capacity. We talked about what that is. That's the stick-built permanent capacity based on either 20 or 26 per classroom. Okay. Number of classrooms. There's the existing portable capacity. And same numbers there. Now, program capacity. So this is the district. Now, our programs can range from classroom size of 12 to 10 to 12 for our self-contained special education students, all the way up to 25 or more for a high-end magnet, right? Or a gifted program magnet, Merlin as an example, or language immersion we have beginning. We start with the higher cohorts. So in this case, to reserve program capacity, we're using an average classroom of 20. So instead of you all, as we talked about, since program placement is not part of the committee's purview, what we have done is we have shown you the capacity we're deducting out for future program placement. So that top number, we back out the number of program. And it also, that back out may also just be an LRC1 classroom or an LRC2. So for example, those are our, that's the nomenclature we have for different levels of special education classrooms. LRC2 you'll refer to as a more self-contained environment. An LRC1 classroom is a student, and Dana could probably define it better than I can, Dr. Bailey, but usually with a single 1 or 2 IEP goals that is in general education most of the time, but does get pulled out for special service. Does that work, Josh, for a definition? And then the enrollment growth capacity. So we nosedive 9% at an elementary. For the most part, I had to build in a cushion for enrollment growth. And you're going to see between 5 and 10% of enrollment growth there. Just to make sure that if we have a bounce back, that we don't draw these boundaries and then we are short. So there's some enrollment growth capacity built into each building. And then you get the total remaining capacity that is eligible for the committee to work on. And then you see the variance. So as an example, the piece count at Cascade Ridge is 415. We have a total capacity of 538, which means we still have remaining capacity of 120 students, or basically 6 classrooms at Cascade Ridge. Okay. So does everybody follow kind of the cadence in the Springboard? So here in the piece counts, the piece count total is what we're proposing to boundary in to each building as we go across. And then of course, it actually deducts the capacity here and we get to a final number. So as you can see, our goals, of course, are to provide some future growth in certain areas and then rebalance our middle schools the best we could. So one thing on middle school 6, as we draw that boundary, I want you to know a few things. It does not have any portable capacity, 0. The site is so confined that we only have stick built. So as a group, we need to be very cognizant. We try to choose neighborhoods that, and luckily enough, that don't have a lot of significant land, undeveloped land in it. And of course, we want to draw that boundary correctly because we do not have any room to fudge and add a portable classroom, or we'd be on the stage or somewhere else. And then elementary 16 and 17 are built smaller, as we talked about, given the land constraints than our newer, most recent iteration of elementary schools at Sunny Hills, et cetera. So
Jake, we have a question.
Yes.
Principal Reckling, hand in the air.
Good question. So I'm just clarifying the variance that you include here, that includes the existing portables remaining in placement on the current sites.
it does.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So for you at IMS, as an example, your building was built with a permanent capacity of 890. The portables that we put in a couple of years ago give you capacity of 208. We've reserved 3 classrooms basically for currently for special education programs, because you don't have any special programs placed there, and then a little bit for enrollment growth. And so that will leave you with a surplus capacity for the first time in a long time. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions on how to read the spreadsheet or the Springboard? Because it is something you're going to have to pick apart and realize. And a lot of this, as we move forward, you'll be making some motions on. And I only have 4 minutes, so I'll get to it.
And Jake, what I'm thinking is, just so folks know, this is something we don't want to rush through too much. So let's do what we can do. And then I'm thinking that Jake, maybe you and I can build in a little bit of time at the beginning of the next meeting to kind of complete the job as far as going over the Springboard. Sound good?
Yep, and most of the springboard, as you find, once we get this, will be the maps. And I am not going to bore you with scrolling through 60 pages of maps, even though they are exciting, but they do show our thinking. So the piece key, very important. You saw those pieces on the spreadsheet above. These are the pieces that we have broken the district down into. As I said, you may have an opportunity as a committee to break those into different pieces as we move forward, and then you'll be able to visually see each piece on each map or on some of the maps as well. So those are the pieces that we'll be working with. Those are our puzzle pieces to be able to reboundary the entire district. It does go over to sheets. Those are what we have currently for feeders. I do want to make a correction on middle school 6. Since we're not changing high school boundaries on this here, this will be Issaquah High and Liberty. There'll actually be a split there because currently we have Newcastle has a Newcastle has some kids. No wait, that's right. Middle school 6 could be fed by two different. Middle school 6 will likely have a split as it goes back. The Maywood kids are likely to go back to Liberty's attendance area as we get to high school boundaries. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any incorrect assumptions made. Now you can see that we have some schools, and this is some committee work that we need to get finished. We left a small chunk of IVE in there and as you read this, basically what it shows you is Apollo, Briarwood, Maple Hills would be Maywood, Newcastle, Cougar Ridge, a portion of IVE, which is, you can see there's some low-hanging committee work to be done to potentially clean that up. So I wanted to let you know that. And again, you see the split, and you have Clark, 90% of IVE, Sunset, which has been a split school for years, and then of course a little chunk of E16. Again, some cleanup that probably needs to be needed from the committee. And so that's how that feeder pattern reads. So our goal is clean feeder patterns as much as possible. But as you can see, we have more splits than we historically have. I think right now the only split elementary we have is Sunny Hills, if I recall, and we've been very fortunate at that. And I guess Cougar is another one. So, Dr. Almy, it's 7:59, but I need to go through a few of these. I'm not going to go into the maps. There are the pieces to ground yourself in. I know it looks a little daunting. I have yet to find a better way to demonstrate the areas than puzzle pieces and kind of neighborhood narrative. And it doesn't take you too long to kind of ground yourself in your own current feeder pattern and puzzle piece areas. So that's how it looks at a district-wide level. That is the proposed, and I'm going to give you how to read these maps because they all, the team put them in the same cadence. So that's the new boundary for elementary 16. Those are the corresponding pieces. Okay. And this next piece is the new boundary. I believe it's without the pieces. Yes. Just to show it to you. And then what we took out of the Clark enrollment area to be able to draw that portion of elementary 16. And then of course the resulting new Clark. Now there are some elementaries and a lot, actually, Colleen, do you know off the top of your head, sorry to call you if you're not fully, there are several elementaries we did not change during the process. So I believe right now all the South End schools, from an elementary standpoint, their boundaries are intact. We obviously have a different middle school feeder for Newcastle, but Colleen, do you know how many elementaries we didn't touch?
I don't have the count.
But I believe there was 8 or 10 that we did not touch or get through. So.
Sounds about right.
So not every, given the location of the elementary, the new elementary and middle school, it's not going to touch every building. However, obviously, if you're in the south end of the district and you're, I have started a committee with no boundary changes, and of course the committee ends up changing something internally for rebalance. We can always look at that. But of course, the south end will still be, in this case, along with the Springboard, it is affected because Newcastle would feed into a different middle school. So if your elementary school is not touched, don't freak out. It was either at the right size or it didn't warrant the movement, at least in our Springboard proposal. And so we have 60 plus pages of maps here, all laying out the decisions we made. I will skip quickly to the middle school boundary so you could take a look at that. Sorry, Josh. We should have run. So as you go through these, you'll get a knack or a hang of it, how the maps are laid out. But so you have before you the numerical Springboard district-wide, all the supporting documents for the maps, several of them. Sorry, I needed to get to the middle school boundaries if I could. Bear with me on the scrolling. There we go. So I wanted to get both of these out at least tonight. So there, we talked about middle school or elementary 16. That is the new proposed Springboard boundary for middle school number 6. So piece 12, 11, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 24. And so those are the proposed boundaries, and which actually I think is 25. Is that correct, Colleen? Not 24. That is the proposed boundary for middle school 6. There it is without the piece designations. And you can see, Colleen, correct me if I'm wrong, what we did on this chart is these are the pieces that are going to middle school 6 out of Maywood's attendance area. So you can see what's being moved. And that mostly is that Newcastle Elementary, current Newcastle catchment. The next slide is the revised Maywood after you pull and change those boundaries out. That's the same duplicate slide. Here are the portions of IMS, correct, that were used to build the middle school 6 boundary. So you can see again by school what we have moved over and put into middle school 6. And then the resulting IMS. And then of course, here's the overlay district wide of the boundaries. And you can see in this quadrant here is middle school 6. PCMS, it actually on the map would connect on the backside of Black Nugget. So it doesn't look like it's off by itself, just so you know, all know. But that continues. That is actually a current boundary, and we haven't changed that. So you get a flavor of what the district-wide middle school boundaries would look like. So that is a lot of information and a heck of a lot of documents. So Josh, you want to talk through the committee about what the next steps are and what our homework assignments are, if possible.
Homework assignment for the next 2 weeks. Familiarize yourself to the best of your ability with the Springboard. That doesn't mean to memorize every map. What I would encourage you to do is to go through the document so you have an understanding of how they're set up and how they're laid out. I would also encourage you to look at the boundary that you live in and that the folks that you are representing, what are those areas? And if you're going to spend more time on one part of the Springboard, I would encourage you to spend time there. Number 2, over the next 2 weeks, if you have questions, please email Jake and myself. We will do our very best to get those answered as quickly as we can back to you. When we come back in 2 weeks, Jake and I will also, as we are building our agenda and whatnot for the 17th, we will build in some additional time. We were cut about probably 10 or 15 minutes short on the amount of time we wanted to go over the agenda to the Springboard tonight. So we will build that back in. And looking forward, what is our plan, our tentative plan for the 17th? Well, we'll review the agenda. We'll take any and all questions that come from the Springboard after we go over it again a little bit more. We'll go over feedback that we've gotten from the community. And then for the second part of the meeting, our goal is to really jump into breakout room discussions on elementary boundaries. We want to start our conversations around those elementary boundaries. Jake, anything I missed about kind of the tentative plan for the agenda for 2 weeks from tonight?
No, I think that would cover it. Of course, the more you drill in and the more questions you have, the better we can make the process, and the more clearly we can articulate to the community, and then of course your own stakeholder groups, why we did something or why we didn't do something. Because oftentimes you get questions, well, why didn't you change the boundaries of the South End Elementary School as well? Well, we believe there could be stable, or whatever we end up on the answer to be. And so, yeah, please scroll through. There's a lot of maps. There's also boundary changes between Pine Lake and Beaver Lake, and rebalancing in PCMS. So just because you highlight portions where middle school 6 and E16 to get us started, please look at the remainder of the deck. Lisa?
Did you say you're able to save this as a PDF? It could just be me, but when I tried to print, some of the charts were going off the page. And since I can't manipulate from the website, I couldn't control that. But if it was a PDF, I don't know that it would happen. So
What we'll do is we'll email all of you. I'll have my assistant in the morning email you these packets so you can have it in and manipulate it yourself.
Okay.
If you want. Because sometimes the view on the website, it can be a bit difficult, depending upon how the PDF is formatted. So
thank you. No
problem. Is there any other requests besides getting the heck out of here? Anything that you want at all? Again, greatly appreciate you volunteering your time during a pandemic to do school boundaries, right? The superintendent kicked us off and wanted to thank you, but it is really important. And, it's so nice to make connections with all of you, a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. In every committee, I meet new folks that I end up knowing for a long time. So, Dr. Almeida, I appreciate you being here. We will work through this boundary process virtually. And give it a try. And of course, administrators, thank you. I know you have nothing better to do, of course, than working evenings with the CFO and the deputy superintendent and the rest of the technical team on boundaries. But, all in all, we know that you're an integral part of this as you welcome those new students into your building. So anything else for the good of the order? I'm sorry we ran long, just a lot of information, and in a new environment, we'll tighten that up for you.
Yeah, so we will send out that Springboard tomorrow morning for everyone. The homework assignment, you know what that is. Email Jake and I with any other questions. Thank you again, everybody. This is a difficult time for everyone, and you're volunteering your time to be with us and go through this really important process. And thank you, Superintendent Thiele, for the thank you in the chat section. And without that, we're 10 minutes over. We broke a norm. All apologies. We'll try to not do that in the future. Other than that, everybody have a great Thursday night and a great Friday tomorrow and a great weekend. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.